Welcome to Caucus. I'm Steve Adubato. You know, the stigma that veterans face can be devastating on so many levels. So the question is, how can we help our veterans? And what exactly do they need? Joining us in the studio, we have 4 experts to talk about this. First, Tim Arora, Program Coordinator for Operation Veterans to Social Workers at Family Connections. Wilfredo Rodriguez with Jewish Vocational Service of MetroWest. He is a Veterans Healthcare Specialist. Joining us for the first time, we have Lori Rizzuto, Director of Atlantic Behavioral Health at Atlantic Health System. And finally, he's back by popular demand, Jack Fanous, Executive Director of GI Go Fund. Good to see all of you. We can see a whole range of websites throughout this program. Resources, help, support for our veterans. Jack, since you've been with us many times, I start with you. We're talking about stopping the stigma that our veterans face. We talked about it before. What the heck is this stigma, and how pervasive is it in 2018?
It's out there for sure. I think shows like this help bring that stigma down. I mean, you are shining the light on things of that nature regularly. I mean, I've done this show many times, and we talk about it. It's helping bring that stigma down.
But what is the stigma? By the way, real quick, the GI Go Fund, tell everyone, I'm going to give everyone a chance to do this. GI Go Fund, and then I'll go back to the stigma. Go ahead.
GI Go Fund's a veterans organization founded 12 years ago after one of my best friends was killed, Lieutenant Seth DeVorn, killed in Iraq. We focus on housing, education, but most importantly, we focus on employment and bringing down that stigma, connecting veterans and employers with one another. And that stigma that you're talking about is sometimes employers don't really understand what veterans bring to the table, what type of individuals they are. Sometimes there's mental health concerns. Some of those mental health concerns are way blown out of proportion. Some things they see on TV, MTV, CNN, things like that. They romanticize those stigmas because it's good for ratings. But the truth is, you know, I deal with a lot of veterans right now, and we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder and PTSD, and some employers are a little nervous about that. But everybody up here will know post-traumatic stress disorder is something that humans go through, right? We all have traumatic experiences. I was in a really bad car accident one time. It's actually the #1 reason why people have post-traumatic stress disorder is from car accidents. So you don't have to serve in the military. It's less than, I think, 5% of the people who have PTSD are actually veterans. So bringing down those walls and letting people understand PTSD is something that we all face.
Laura, let me ask you this. Mental health issues and veterans. Beyond what Jack has said, are there unique issues, mental health issues that veterans face? Not all, but many.
Many. I think, you know, you certainly start at the PTSD piece of it, distractibility, difficulty concentrating, sleeping, depression, isolation is a huge thing. So I think most people don't talk about isolation as a mental health issue, but you know, you have veterans who come back, and it's really difficult to make that transition to somehow make that description to your family of what you just went through, and they often retreat. So that loneliness, that lack of connectedness, that perpetuates that depression.
What about for families? What about for families of veterans? We're talking about the stigma. I often think, to what degree do families help? How do they hurt? Advice for family members.
I think on the family side of the house, there is that misconception that Jack mentioned that the media provides. So it's, oh, dad's coming home from service. I'm going to expect him to act a little differently. Or also perceive that it's a very strict, very regimented household that they're going to provide because they're in service. But realistically, that's not the case. A military family is just like any family that has working professionals in it. And that work is going to bring its own unique amount of stress. So there's more of a psychoeducational aspect, because with the veteran community...
What? A
psychoeducational aspect to it.
What do you mean by that?
So to educate the family on potential circumstances or maybe observed behaviors that could happen potentially if exposed to very extreme circumstances such as combat. But like any situation, it's the family's capability to adapt to the changes. So as long as they're provided of what to look out for and how to support that individual or individuals in that household, it could benefit the whole family unit.
Describe your organization, Tim.
So Family Connections, Operation Veterans and Social Workers, is a nonprofit that provides free counseling for individual, couples, group, and family counseling to veterans and their families. And we're staffed completely by veterans because we found that, and we work off the model that vets only want to talk to other vets. And it comes from the understanding that only vets really truly understand from a mental health perspective what those veterans have gone through in service.
And you served?
And, I'm sorry?
Your service?
Oh, I was Marine Corps. I served overseas in Iraq and Fallujah from 2006 to 2007.
I acknowledged him last time, so if you don't mind, I'll acknowledge him again. Your service dog,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
is with us.
Yes.
Right? He's with you all the time?
For the most part, all the time. In certain circumstances, I don't bring him, but majority of the time, he's with me.
Describe really quick what a service dog is.
So a service dog, I mean, there's a lot of confusion. There's
Yeah, that's why I asked.
there's an emotional support animal, which primarily serves a purpose for an individual in a household where they decrease anxiety or depression-related symptoms. And those are animals that typically don't escort the individual outside the home environment. So they offer a decrease to symptoms that the handler may experience in their home. A therapy dog is more interactive, and I'd say more for the environment, where that can sometimes be confused with a service dog. And therapy dogs are brought to universities, work environments, or public settings that interact with the general public for everyone to benefit from.
And Brian
what offers.
is?
He's a service dog.
And he's with you.
And service dogs, how they differ is they offer the handler individual care. So for me, for example, I suffer from TBI and post-traumatic stress disorder. Brian's work is a psychiatric service dog, so his service that he provides me is tailored to my symptomology and how it decreases my symptoms.
He matters a great deal.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't be here today without him, and I could say that definitively.
Thank you for clarifying that. I imagine
no
the whole
problem.
range of people watching right now have no idea. Let me bring you into this conversation. Wilfredo, you served.
Yes.
Where?
I served in Iraq and Afghanistan. I was with Marines back in 2003 to 2006 in Fallujah. I was their chaplain. I was their mortuary chaplain. Yes.
Because?
I'm sorry?
Because. How do you wind up being a chaplain?
Oh, that's a long story.
Can I get the PBS version?
Yeah. Well, I was already a pastor. I'm a minister in the Reformed Church in America, and I wanted to serve somewhere in the military and not necessarily fire a weapon, and chaplain was a natural fit for me.
Let me ask you this. We're talking about mental health issues. We're talking about stigma. Given your expertise, given your vocation, how do you help veterans with your organization?
Well, at JVS, where I work as the social worker, we have a peer support group.
Describe it.
Like Tim was saying, in the end, veterans really want to talk to another veteran. I mean, I'm a licensed social worker. But in the end, they want to really understand and know that whoever they're talking to can understand their story. And basically, it's peers helping peers. So we meet every Monday from 10 to 12. And basically, it's veterans listening to each other's story. And I think that in all due respect to social workers and clinicians who haven't served the military, we don't always get the whole story. So these veterans who have been there understand each other. And
What do they share?
all kinds of stories. It doesn't have to always be deep. It could be always, you know, hey, listen, I went to the VA and this happened, or, you know, I had a hard time getting here, you know, with all the traffic.
People talk about relationships. It's
Yeah.
a hard time
Oh, yeah.
connecting with a woman, a man, whomever.
Right.
The issues of relationships. Let me ask you this without getting too deep. For all of us who have been challenged in relationships, do you think it's even more challenging in certain ways for those who have served to make meaningful connections in relationships? And I'll come back to you on this, Larry.
Sometimes I think because sometimes they feel that there's really no one that really understands their story. They've been to Iraq, they've been to Afghanistan, but the family hasn't, or their significant other hasn't.
Or someone they'd want to be their significant other.
Right, exactly. So there's that disconnect. So we try to connect them back. We try to listen to their story so that they feel like there's someone they can talk to.
And if that help is not there, could it exacerbate any potential mental health issues that a veteran is facing if he or she feels isolated without any help?
Probably.
Jump in.
Sure. I guess I was thinking, you know,
Am I
that's...
making
that's,
too much of this?
Oh, not
the
at all.
relationship thing?
Not at all. You know, how much do you, I think your point was very well taken. So yes, you come home and you have a family or friends and they're already established relationships. That's difficult enough. But what about you're trying to engage in a new relationship? How much do you disclose? When do you disclose it? Is it within your first couple of dates? Do you wait? And then somebody, when you don't talk about it, then they have the same thing that you talked about, that fear of that potential maybe violence, or if somebody has PTSD, the way it's described oftentimes on TV
People think
is
what's
very
going to
sensational.
happen. Someone hears a sound and?
Right, and something is going to happen when that doesn't always happen, right? And so maybe you're then reluctant to enter into that relationship. So then what do you do?
And there's also
By the way, I'll come back to you.
Sure.
Your organization, how do you help them?
So at Atlantic
I'll come back
Health,
to you, I promise.
at Atlantic Health, we have a program, a new program. We just opened it in July of last year. It's called True North, and so
True North.
True North. So we have 2 clinicians at this point. We were talking earlier about how, although they're supposed to do therapy, you know, in a room therapy, therapy looks very different. Therapy is doing case management and linking people up to jobs and doctor's offices and all those kinds of things, those basic needs that everybody has. That's just as therapeutic as sitting in a room and doing what we call a 50-minute hour. That's important, and so that's what we do at True North. We
Very
do linkage.
gratifying.
Oh, wonderful. I was saying earlier as we were chatting, I cry often as I discuss this because this is the most important work, the service that these guys have and gals have
And
given
women.
to us. Yeah,
So
amazing.
before I go to the break, Tim, go ahead.
So we're talking about difficulty of starting romantic relationships for some vets.
It could be
And
romantic, could be any kind of relationship.
it could be anything. Let's just use this example of romantic. There is a perception of the veteran having a flashback with a partner while they sleep. Some vets do have sleeping difficulties that start from service, and the media may portray it as, you know, that they become unconsciously abusive towards that partner. So there's a lot of stigma attached to, oh, am I going to trigger this person, or is this going to be a healthy relationship? And that sometimes can be a barrier for people understanding really what symptoms are, or really what the condition is that someone has. It takes a lot for an individual to open up and say, hey, I suffer from PTSD or TBI, and it's due to service. But not everything
TBI is traumatic
brain injury. Yes.
It's interesting as you say this because we all struggle with, or have, in creating new relationships. How much do we disclose and when? But I can't imagine how much more intense that challenge is for veterans who have seen, experienced, been through things that the rest of us can't even imagine. Did you think about that?
Oh, when I was actively dating, you mean? Or
Yeah.
how I deal with it with my clients when they bring it up?
No,
Which one?
I'm you.
Oh, yeah, that's a big issue. And, you know, I have Brian, so it's a big elephant in the room, to say the least, that, oh, why is he there? People get very inquisitive. And
Hey,
it
what's up
almost
with the
opens,
dog?
it's what's up with the dog? Are you training him? You know, is he just a pet that you bring
You don't
around
want to tell
everywhere?
your whole story right out of the box.
I mean, I'm pretty transparent, I do, but it's either, they either accept it or they don't. It's a very black and white thing from my personal experience. There's very been, oh, wow, I can accommodate to this. It's either, that's too much for me, or, you know what, I have my own stuff I deal with too. So I'm very happy that you're open
But you
and very
find out pretty
transparent.
quickly.
Oh yeah, you find it pretty quickly. Yeah. So.
Real Jack, I'm sorry, Jack, I will go to this break, I promise. You have not served, but you have made a difference for so many veterans, particularly dealing with mental health issues. How do you connect?
I was actually going to jump in and say this. I think one of the most important parts, we've been hearing the conversations that veterans like to talk to veterans. There's another aspect of it, civilians like to talk to civilians, right? So there are things that people at job fairs, people who are heads of HR or companies who are hiring veterans will say to me that they won't say to veterans because it's inappropriate, right? But I've had people...
Like?
You know, I really think this guy's dynamic, but I think he has post-traumatic stress disorder. Is he going to come in and shoot the place up? I've heard that before.
You've heard that?
A lot of times. Is this person going to be violent? I hear those things. They're never going to say it to these guys because it's inappropriate.
How do you deal with it?
So I think that over the last 12 years of doing this, somebody said this to me, they described my role recently as this, that I am one of those simultaneous translators at the United Nations. I speak both languages. I've been around veterans long enough now and been at their dinner tables when they're losing their homes and when they're being foreclosed on and being evicted. I've felt their pain. I've seen families
And
that
you know
work
families,
and don't.
because by the way, we should make it clear that your connection to GI Go Fund, your creation of it was based on a very close relationship with a very close friend at Rutgers University, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually, he and I started second grade together, and we were in class all the way through high school, and then we both went to college together. Our senior year at Rutgers was the year of 9/11. He gave up his chance to go to law school, join the Army. I didn't. And when he was killed, it just all became very real to me. I was 21 when he deployed. I was a kid, right? But when he was killed, I was 24, and all of this became very, very real. His mom, who's the chairwoman of our board of directors now.
I met her, she's amazing.
She's incredible. And really being able to speak to both communities is a very important role, right? We spend a lot of time talking about... Yeah, we spend a lot of time talking that veterans want to talk to veterans, which is true. But we ultimately need to get them to be able to talk to civilians for this all to work, for these barriers to come down, for all of this other stuff to go down, because the civilians want to help, right? We talk about veteran-friendly companies, veteran-friendly schools. Everybody's veteran-friendly. I haven't come across a person who's not veteran-friendly. But what does that mean? Nobody hates our veterans, but we want to be able to communicate with them, serve them, help them, learn about them, and talk to them, and that happens through dialogue and communication.
And that's what we're doing right here. I'm sorry for going over the break right here. Stay with us, I promise. In just a few seconds, we'll be right back.
To see more Caucus New Jersey with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
Welcome back, folks. I promise you'll be back. How can we begin to change the conversation in meaningful ways with employers, with friends, with family, with others? How do we change it?
I think we need to educate employers. I think we need to define a little bit what PTS is and what it isn't. And I think a lot of people have gone into the stereotype of what a veteran is, that he's crazy. And a lot of that
we're afraid. We honor them, we revere them, we respect them, we're afraid of them.
Right, right. And part of it is to understand that veterans are not crazy. We're not people who are violent. Part of that is for them to understand what PTSD is and what the veterans go through.
But why is it important? Question, devil's advocate, why is it important for the rest of us, particularly employers, family members, others, to understand those things?
You have an untapped skill set in vets. That's the biggest thing that every employer misses out on, an untapped skill set. Meaning that vets have been tried and tested, been put through extreme circumstances, and have came out shining on the other end.
Someone says, oh, can he or she handle the job, you say?
Absolutely.
Because?
Because they've been through extreme stressful situations. They've been through extreme chaotic work situations. And at the same time, they rely on something that, unfortunately, a lot of civilian employers really don't connect, which is teamwork. Vets rely on another, and part of the transition problem and breaking down the stigma is vets want to feel part of the team when they come home. And the hardest part when vets transition back home is finding a community to be a part of. And sometimes that could be as simple as joining a professional environment in which they feel welcomed and revered for their skill set. Not because of what they've been through. Everyone in the world has baggage to some degree.
That's right.
But to actually be revered for, hey, you are a valuable asset as an individual, not because of where you served or what you did, but because of what you bring to the table in professionalism.
Lori, jump in here.
Yeah, so I guess I had a couple thoughts. I think education is important around mental health issues. I think education is important for both the veteran and the employer.
Does it break down the stigma a bit?
It does. I think we need to talk about, translate, what did I learn? I'm not a veteran, but what did I learn as a veteran in military life? How did my skills translate into what I bring to you as the employer?
You're giving advice to vets right now.
Right.
Go ahead.
I think that we need to talk about that. The language, having to be able to have an employer smart enough to know how to translate it. And there were ways of doing that. I did X, Y, and Z in the military. This translates into this kind of job skill in civilian life. So I think education around those kinds of issues. I think it's helping the veteran understand that they have purpose and meaning in a company. When you're in military life, you know that you're there for a mission. You know that you're working towards an accomplishment and a specific goal. If you're in a company, an organization, you might not always understand, I'm doing this particular task at my job and it's contributing to the overall mission of the company in this way. Being able to translate and speak the same kind of language is really very important for both campuses.
That's great. And by the way, Jack, your organization does a great job connecting veterans to organizations that are more inclined
Yeah, absolutely.
to be supportive and create opportunities.
So we actually launched a portal that does exactly what you're talking about, translating military.
Put up Jack's website if we could, team. They're always a step ahead of me. Go ahead.
Yeah, military language into civilian language, and vice versa. We've actually done it in reverse too, so a company can come tell me what type of a job they're hiring, and I identify the veterans that have those skill sets. What's really important in taking it to the next level, like a lot of this conversation started in 2010, 2011. The unemployment rate among veterans was 25, 30%, and it started to come down. But what we've seen now is that we're connecting veterans to jobs that they might not find rewarding for one reason or the other. So we want to connect veterans to the right types of employers and really taking it to the next level of explaining what did you do in the military. The old buzzwords were, teamwork, reliable, all those other things. But let's really look at some of the skill sets that companies value. And when you say somebody is incredible with their time management skills, right? So you're an employer. Now that makes sense to me. I get in at 8 o'clock in the morning. My emails are done by 8:30. I'm caught up. I'm ready for my meeting at 9. I have my webinars ready to go by 10:30.
Well, being prepared, my gosh, how important it is.
And you speak to that and say, hey, you know what? These guys are natural project managers. Yeah, men and women are natural project managers. They are often given projects to manage in the field, as Tim said, under duress. Right? So when you say, all right, well, this guy or girl can manage these projects under those circumstances, well, maybe we can bring them in and train it. And we're starting to see companies, IT companies that deal in the financial industry, who are saying, all right, these veterans are trained to be trainable. That's the way the military did it. They're trained to be trainable. Let's bring them in, capitalize on the skill sets that were built into them through the military experience, and build great employees.
In a couple of minutes we have left, if a vet, if he or she is having a very hard time finding employment, can it exacerbate the stigma? Can it exacerbate the divisions, the barriers, the isolation? Can it?
Yes, it can. Especially the longer it goes, and I think
like what's wrong with me?
Right.
Talk about it.
Well, what's wrong with me?
Could vets be thinking like, what is it me?
Right.
They do think that.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of self-blame that they take. Why
For serving our country.
Yeah.
Ask this question, if I could.
And that they do the right thing, too, excuse me. That
What do you
they
mean?
do the right thing. Maybe if I hadn't been away for so long, maybe I would have been able to find work.
Maybe if I didn't go on another tour?
Yeah, exactly.
Really? So, and by the way, I often think about this. To what degree does a vet choose to be open? Listen, there are people working in all kinds of professional situations or seeking to be in professional situations that do not share any mental illness issues. But if a veteran is facing some of those unique challenges because he or she served, are we advising that they be open about this with potential employers, or is this just not appropriate?
Steve, I was in a situation when
Got a minute left, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, when I was looking for work, I had actually an employer from the from the employment center saying, I'm in the Navy Reserve. I've been so in 20 years. He told me, do not put in your resume that you're in the Navy Reserve. And I told him, why? I'm proud of my service. He says, an employer is not going to see that. He's going to see a guy who's going to be away for at least 2 or 3 months in the year, or 2 or 3 weeks in the year, sorry.
And not as employable?
Right, exactly. So you're a liability. He's got to fill in for you. Why should he hire you?
Taking away productivity time.
Right. So it works against you. And I was told that by someone who works at the Labor Department. Don't put that down.
I'll tell you what, I shouldn't have raised that whole question of what you share and what you don't share, because it's a complex topic. Can we have you all back, talk about this again, and continue an important conversation? Cannot thank you all for doing great public service.
Thank you.
Including Brian, our service member.
He was
See you next time.
I work for Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I'm a catastrophic case manager. I'm a nurse. I feel a sense of responsibility to each and every member that I speak with on the phone. I know where they live, I know their towns, I know the hospitals they go to. A lot of times I know their physicians, and I love helping people at very difficult times of their lives. The job I have now is the perfect job for me. I think I was born a nurse.
Also brought to you by the Turl Fund and by RWJ Barnabas Health,